the last week, we've been having a bit of a debate in our office. As a three-row SUV, which is better, the Hyundai Alcazar or the Tata Safari? Now, we have both of them with us today, so let's find out.
Now, before we go ahead and take this fight further, I would like to clarify, Rahul, that this is not actually a Safari. Like I said last time when we did the old Safari versus new Safari, that Jani, ये Safari नहीं है, Harrier है. एक दो ज़्यादा लोगों का carrier है.
Look at you, Mr. Stretched Creta. Can we please get to it?
Alright, so let's just agree that both of these vehicles are extended forms of compact SUVs, but they are built to serve a purpose. So which one comes out on top? Let's find out.
When it comes to exterior styling and packaging, I think the Safari has won it hands down. It's taller, it's wider, it's got chunkier wheels, it looks more butch on the road. It's got that street road presence of what an SUV should be. I mean, I'll admit the front is pretty similar to the Harrier, but there are certain cues like the new grille and some changes in the headlamps, bigger wheels and the longer shape of the car and the longer rear end with the stepped roof, of course. The Safari, I think, has won this hands down. I can see the Alcazar endeavors to be different from the Creta, especially with the rear styling. So could you please explain further?
Well, design is subjective, so I think we should get inside the cabin and look at the features.
Let's settle this once and for all. Please go ahead and tell me what's new.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, this is longer than the Creta, and the wheelbase is 150 millimeters longer. So yes, it looks longer, it's got a different grille, looks a bit wider. The rear, as you said, it endeavors to be different, and it is quite different. It's also got larger wheels. So yes, it definitely looks much bigger than the Creta. It's got a better road stance, and yeah, I mean, also looks a bit more premium. But well, I'll have to unfortunately agree with Rahul on this one that the Safari undoubtedly is the better looking one of the two. Now, while the Safari won first round, well, this is an area where the Alcazar has a big advantage, Rahul, because unlike your Safari, which is just about okay in terms of features, the Alcazar is loaded to the gills with features, and that too segment first features. For example, let's talk about this screen. It's a very nice looking screen with a very slim borders all around. And this one is a fully connected car with an embedded SIM, comes with BlueLink, great to look at, brilliant to work. The Safari, is it a fully connected vehicle? And if I'm not wrong, is the screen anything like this?
No, I will admit that the touchscreen is much better, more intuitive, and it has a lot more features, of course. We also do miss the ventilated seats that this one has, which is great. That instrument cluster, I do have a semi-digital instrument cluster in that, but this one's got a few neat tricks. Could you please explain what those are?
Yeah, so this one, Rahul, is a fully digital instrument cluster, and it looks the part. There are different modes to it. So like a lot of luxury vehicles, you can change between modes, and these are like very different modes. It completely changes the look. Loads of information, easy to read out. But one big difference, which the Safari does not have, in fact no other vehicle in this segment has, is a blind spot detection system. So where you see these two circular pods, when I indicate right, the right one turns into a camera and it gives the display. In fact, it turns into a display for the camera that is on the ORVM. Both ORVMs have the camera, and that way when I go left, so much safer to drive on our crazy roads.
Yes, I can see that it would make it easier to drive on Indian streets, but what else is new?
Well, a lot actually. See, I mean, wireless charging, well, the Creta already had it, but where this goes ahead a step further is that you have it here, and you have a wireless charging even in the middle row. Do you have one to start with?
No.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of features, then I think Rahul will have to accept defeat.
I will concede that the Alcazar has two offer more features with the in that package. But let's take a look at what the second row has to offer.
Alright, so now it's to the next department in that space. Now, for your reference, I must tell you that the Alcazar that we have here is a 6-seat version, whereas the Safari we have today on test is a 7-seat version, but both of them come in either 6 or 7-seat versions. Now, Rahul, to start with, of course, the 6-seat here, I think the Alcazar offers good space. I have my seat pushed all the way forward. Rahul has his seat
all the way
pushed
to the
all the way back.
Yeah.
And I have still a decent amount of space. You have loads of space. I think the seats also are good. What do you think about the seats and the overall headroom, the feel?
I think I wasn't expecting the kind of space that the Alcazar offers, of course.
Yeah.
It's actually impressive from the size and shape of the car. I was actually pretty impressed. There is good knee room even at the front and rear. That's pretty good. You get the center armrest, which is nice. The storage. There's a wireless charger, as we said before. There's a USB. There's storage here. There's rear AC vents, of course, and purifier. What I really like are these trays, which are the quality could be slightly better, but it feels pretty good. And you get more features like the sunshades on the
Yeah, I mean, yeah, these are really nice to have.
It's feature loaded for sure, but even though the space is adequate, it's not abundant as it is in the Safari. You have good headroom here as well in the Safari. Also, you have a lot of headroom, but when it comes to like overall shoulder room and space, you feel a little more comfortable and more less claustrophobic, I would say, in the Safari as you would here.
Yeah, I think that's also down to the part that I don't think there's a big difference in terms of space between both vehicles.
Yes.
Where it does, however, they are different is I think the color of the interior, because that's overall it's got almost a white interior. It just
adds a lot to
looks
go around.
a lot airy. Alright, so now the most important third row, and starting off with the Safari. Well, I think it's not a very bad place to be in. I mean, I think it's one of the better places to be in if you talk about this segment. Nice seat, nice space. I think, yeah, it's good.
Exactly. I mean, like this is a 7-seat model, so even with this in the middle, like there's still enough room for us, and there's still ample of space around. The shoulder room is not tight, and you have armrests. The AC vents, yes, they eat in a little bit to the glass over here,
Yeah.
but it means that the air vents are straight to you and not like pointing to the sides.
Yeah.
So that is a good part about this. The seats, the under thigh support is decent, and also the knees aren't as high up as you would expect it to be. The height is good, and the seat is quite comfortable to be in.
That's
You
correct.
could spend a decent amount of time in the back of the Safari.
Absolutely. The only slight thing is I think maybe in the last row, this feels a bit claustrophobic. The glass area in the last row is quite small. So for people who aren't very comfortable with tight spaces, there could be a slight issue
possible, yeah.
here. I think that's where the Alcazar are slightly better. But I think on that account, let's head to Alcazar and see how the seat is there.
For sure.
Alright, so Rahul, now in the most important third row, and this is the third row for the Alcazar, and well, I think it's a decent place to be in. It serves the purpose of being a 6 or a 7-seat vehicle. I think it's got, both of us are able to get our legs behind the seat, although they are touching the seat, and the seat also is fine. We've got armrests on either side. I think, but it's the under thigh support that's lacking, right?
Yeah, I would agree. The under thigh support is pretty lacking, and your knees are slightly up.
Yep.
Which means the seats are a little bit low. They could have been a touch higher, maybe that would have improved that.
Yeah.
The seats are actually at the maximum front position at the moment, and the legs are touching. There is room for my feet to underneath, and there is some space. If you could put your feet here, maybe
you can put it on
we
the
have 2
side.
feet.
So it gets better.
Can do have space in the middle, which is good. You have your USB and your air vents and your
Cup holders.
adjustable cup holders and all of that over here, of course. Um, it's nice. It's comfortable, but I wouldn't be here for a really long journey, especially in a 7-seat,
Yeah.
because this would get blocked off, and
Absolutely.
it'll be a little more like closed out inside this cabin in that
Yes,
case.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so you need to keep that
Yeah.
in mind that this is the 6-seat. In the 7-seat,
Yeah.
things would be a bit tighter because we'll not have this luxury of getting our legs here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, but that said, yeah, I think so. Overall, I think Safari has an edge here.
Yes.
Because, and the edge, mind you, is not because Safari's got loads more of space. It's not just that. It's mainly because I think the seat. Safari
Yeah.
seats are bigger than that of the Alcazar, and I think that's what makes the biggest difference because those offer better under thigh support.
Yes,
And-
and it's slightly higher, so you
Yes,
get that.
that's
You don't have to
right.
sit with your knees high up. There is more leg room, of course, a lot more leg room compared to this,
Yes.
because it doesn't touch, and there's actual proper. You can sit comfortably in the back of the Safari, and you would be comfortable not just for short journeys, for a relatively long hour and a half, maybe 2 hours in
Yeah.
that seat, and you wouldn't have any problems, even in the 7-seat model that we have right
Absolutely.
now. So.
Yes.
I think in this space and the third row segment of this comparison, I think the Safari is is a winner in this category. For sure.
Yes, and it is not by a big margin, but yes, Safari has an edge over here.
Okay, so from behind the wheel, the Alcazar, we're currently driving the 1.5 liter turbo diesel CRDI model with, of course, the 6-speed automatic transmission. It's the same unit that is doing duty in the Creta, and in state of tune, it's also exactly the same 115 horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque. However, Hyundai says that they have retuned it, like the torque delivery is and the power delivery is a little different. I don't feel much difference myself though, but of course they have these traction and drive modes. I tried all of them and I find absolutely no significant difference as such. However, it is extremely refined as a motor. I initially couldn't figure out if it's a petrol or diesel until I opened the bonnet and checked the tacho. So it's a very refined engine, far more refined than the Safari, I will admit. However, it is quite down on power and torque as well compared to the Safari because it's a bigger engine. It's a 2-liter unit in that. So coming to the transmission, I mean, it shifts smooth. It is predictable. It knows pretty much what you want from it. It does come with paddle shifters like we mentioned before, but the Safari doesn't get it. Something I would really prefer if the Safari had. Having said that, in this, at the flick of a paddle, occasionally, I mean, it's hesitant on the upshift. It doesn't shift immediately when you want it to. But even when it's like cruising at a higher speed, the downshifts also become a little slower. Other than that, the gearbox is smooth to shift though. When it comes to ride, like that speed breaker, we didn't really feel much. It's very smooth, it's pliant. The Safari's bigger wheels do a lot of the absorbing as well, but it is a little bouncy in comparison to the Alcazar. Now, and because the Alcazar drives a bit like the Creta and like a crossover, like an hatchback. So if that is something that you're looking for and you got a lot of these driver aids and features that help you, it's actually easier to drive because the Safari is quite wide and it feels wide when you're driving on the road. So if ease of driving is your concern, then the Alcazar is the one for you. However, I haven't driven the petrol model myself. That offers a little more grunt, and I hear that it's a little more engaging to drive. I'm not sure if that is true because I haven't driven it, but this one, it'll get the job done for what you need it to. Now, because the Alcazar is much lighter than the Safari, braking, I prefer how the calibration of this setup is because you can feel the brakes much better. In the Safari, is a little unnerving at some times because of the weight and the size. So you don't get a real perspective when you're driving. It can catch you off guard sometimes. In the Safari, you of course sit much higher up. It gives you that SUV butch stance and like the commanding driving position which most people prefer. In comparison to the Alcazar, it is much better in that regard. However, the A-pillar on the Safari as well as the Harrier, it's been notorious for this. It creates a giant blind spot on this side of the driver. So it can be a little difficult to see around the big wing mirrors and the A-pillar. That issue is not there with the Alcazar.
Now, the Safari is powered by a larger engine than you get in the Alcazar. This has a 2-liter engine. This is the same engine sourced from Jeep, so it's basically the one that you get in the Compass. Now, this produces 170 horsepower, and if you compare to the 115 that the diesel Alcazar offers, well, you might think Alcazar just loses it and is nowhere close to this one. But that's not the case. And the main reason for that is weight. The Safari is a larger and a much heavier vehicle. And it's not as if there's a difference of just 50 or 100 kilograms. Alcazar is lighter than Safari by about 400 plus kgs. That's a lot. And if you subtract that weight and look at the power to weight ratio, well, that's where these vehicles are almost at par. And as a result of this, when you talk of actual on-road performance, I think it is the Alcazar which turns out to be better. Now, if I talk about the Safari that I'm driving right now, there is better low-end grunt than the Alcazar's engine. In the Alcazar, you get more of a linear acceleration. If you want that grunt, well, then it is Safari that has that instant grunt. But beyond that, it's also a vocal engine. It's not as refined as the one in the Alcazar. So yes, in terms of refinement, it's the Alcazar that takes away the cake. And talking further about the performance, the gearbox. Well, both of the cars that we have with us on the test today, they are equipped with automatic gearboxes. And as it happens to be, the Harrier is running a Hyundai automatic gearbox. And well, the gearbox here does its job fine, no problems at all. It's got a decent speed in terms of shifting. Same is the case with Alcazar. And it's just that the Alcazar just feels a lot more refined than the Safari. And if I have to talk about ride and handling, well, ride quality is an area where the Safari has an edge over the Alcazar. It just has a softer ride quality. And handling, well, again, I think handling is an area where the Alcazar takes more points because it's a smaller vehicle, it's a little more compact, lesser weight, and that really makes a big difference when you push the vehicle hard around corners. So yes, I think overall the Alcazar just feels more refined to drive. It just feels more easy to drive. It's a bit easier to drive, and that's the defining difference for me between these two vehicles. And that's why if I were to pick one, I would drive the Alcazar. The Alcazar and the Safari are two good 6 or 7 seat vehicles in their segment. That said, the Alcazar with its higher number of features and a more competitive pricing offers better value for money. And that's the reason why the Alcazar is today the winner of the shootout. However, if you are looking for a 6 or 7 seat SUV and space, especially at the third row, is your prerogative, then it is still the Safari which is going to be a better buy.
Having said that, both of these cars are not something you would buy with your emotional value. And if that is the case, what's wrong with the Toyota Innova Crista?
Well, that's a story for some other day.